The class by chanting Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. So how are we going to do this? So first, I thought we could start with the Anapana Sati Sutra, and all that we are going to be doing in going through the Anapana Sati Sutra is to go through an analysis of the sutra word to word, right? Because, and I think in this sutra specifically, usually when people do Sati, the Anapana Sati Sutra, that is also how they would usually do it, which is to go from word to word to truly grasp the meaning and the intentions from which the sutra has been taught. After we go through the Anapana Sati Sutra, we are then going to go through the manuals that have been published by PAOK with regards to Anapana Sati practice, and then also the manuals published by the Mahasi technique or by Mahasi Sayadaw with regards to Anapana Sati, right? And I think that would then offer us a deep and robust understanding of Anapana Sati practice. Anapana Sati practice. And starting from Anapana, we would then be sort of going into Dhatu Manasikara afterwards, right? I know that I promised that we will be doing Dhatu Manasikara today, but then when I was going through the resources, what I found was we would be repeating a lot of it if we were to, or I would have to repeat a lot of the information, because also some of the information which is in Dhatu Manasikara cannot be done without a proper analysis of what Anapanasati is, right? Because in most of these positions, people go into Dhatu Manasikara or any of the other practices after practicing Anapanasati. And as we would also be learning, we would find that Anapanasati has been taught both as a way that Anapanasati can be practiced alone for samatha, as we already know that, and Anapanasati can also be taught in a way that it encompasses each and every aspect of the Satipatthana, right? Of the Satipatthana, starting from Kayanupassana and all the way to Dhammanupassana, right? So we would be going through, today we will be going through the Anapanasati Sutra. All right. So page number 20, everyone, on the handout. Right. Page number 20 on the handout. Right. Anapanasati Sutra. The discourse on the mindfulness of in and out breathing. Right, of in and out breathing. Evam me sutang, thus have I heard. Right, thus have I heard. Ekam samyam bhagava savatyam viharati ubbarami migaramata pasade. Which is, on one occasion, the Blessed One stayed in the palace of Migara's mother in the eastern park near Savatthi. And we know who Migara's mother is, isn't it? Right? Vishaka, for those of you who remember, right? Migara's mother was Migara. Now, who is Migara? Migara is Vishaka's father-in-law, right? Not Vishaka's son, right? Why is it referred to as Migara's mother? Because Vishaka is a person who mothered him in the path of enlightenment and created or gave the opportunity rather to Migara to go for refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, where he, through learning the Dhamma from the Buddha, that is why they call him Migara's mother, right? Who is Vishaka, right? Sambahulehi abhinyetehi terehi savakehi sadde. Together with many well-known elder disciples, Ayasmata cha Sariputtena, the Venerable Sariputta, the Venerable Moggallana, the Venerable Mahakassapa, the Venerable Mahakachana, the Venerable Mahakottila, the Venerable Mahakappina, the Venerable Mahachunda, the Venerable Anuruddha, the Venerable Revata, the Venerable Ananda. Oh, what a gathering! All the celebrities of Theravada Buddhism are there. What a gathering it would have been, isn't it? Anyehi cha abhinyatehi terehi savakehi sadding, and other very well-known disciples. Tenakopana samayena tera bhikkhu nave bhikkhu ovadanti anusa santi. Now at the time, elder monks were exhorting and instructing new monks, nava bhikkhu. Some elder monks were exhorting and instructing 10 monks. Some elder monks were exhorting and instructing 20 monks. Some elder monks were exhorting and instructing 30 monks. Some elder monks were exhorting and instructing 40 monks. And the new monks, having been exhorted and instructed by the elder monks, had attained successive stages of higher distinction, right? So you could picture it. You could picture it in monks, and actually this is something that we saw, or rather I have seen, happening in monasteries in Burma, where they would have different groups of monks exhorted under specific different teachers, and all of them would be sort of discussing meditation theory in terms of to aid meditation, right? So it would have been a very beautiful sort of even a visual, even in sense of a visual. At the time, it was the Uposatha day of the 15th on the full moon night of the invitation. Right? On the full moon night of the invitation, which is referring to the Vasana Kala, right? Invitation ceremony, which is the beginning of the Vasana season. The Blessed One was seated in the open, surrounded by the community of monks. Then, surveying the very recent community of monks, very silent community of monks, the Blessed One addressed them thus. The Blessed One addressed them thus. Monks, I am content with this progress. My mind is content, monks. The word content is derived from the word aradha, which is satisfied, right? Satisfied. With this progress, so the monks assert all the more effort, right? All the more effort. The word which is used here, assert, is arabhata, right? And effort here is, of course, virya. I will wait right here at Shravasti for Komudi, full moon of the fourth month, right? Of the fourth month, which is the end of the raining season, which also points to the end of the Vasana Kala, right? End of the Vasana Kala. The monks of the countryside heard. It is said that the Blessed One will remain in Shravati for the Kaumudi full moon of the 4th month. The monks of the countryside then left for Shravasti to see the Blessed One. And the elder monks exhorted and instructed the new monks all the more intensively. It was an occasion, right? It was blessed by the fact that the Buddha is going to remain in Shravasti, right? So they wanted to make all the more effort to attain enlightenment, right? And that gives us an idea of how monks at the time showed gratitude and adoration towards the Buddha as well. It was not through anything else other than practicing, right? Walking in the path laid down by the Buddha. The monks of the countryside left for Shravasti to see the Blessed One, and the elder monks exhorted and instructed the new monks all the more intensively. Some elder monks were exhorting and instructing 10 monks. Some elder monks were exhorting and instructing 20 monks. Some elder monks were exhorting and instructing 30 monks. Some elder monks were exhorting and instructing 40 monks. And the new monks, having been exhorted and instructed by the elder monks, attained successive stages of higher distinction, right? Higher distinction. At that time, it was opposite the day of the 15th, the full moon day, a full moon night of the Kaumudi full moon of the 4th month. The Blessed One was seated in the open, surrounded by the community of monks. Then, surveying the silent community of monks, the Blessed One addressed them. Monks, the assembly is without idle talk, is free from idle talk, which is worthy of offerings, worthy of hospitality, worthy of gifts, worthy of salutation, with the lotus gesture, which is the highest way of sort of showing respect, right? In Hindu Brahmin culture, right? An incomparable field of merit for the world. Monks, such is the community of monks, such is this assembly. That a small gift given to it becomes great, and a great gift greater. Monks, such is a community of monks, such is this assembly. That it is rare for the world to see such company. Monks, such is the community of monks, such is this assembly. That it is worth going many leagues with only a traveling bag just to see such company. Just to see such company. Monks. There are in this community of monks those who are arahants, with mental cankers destroyed, who have lived the holy life, done what had to be done, laid down the burden, reached their own goal, destroyed the fetters of being, completely liberated through direct knowledge. Such is the nature of the community of monks. Monks, there are in this community of monks those who, with the destruction of the 5 lower fetters, right? Five lower fetters, 5 lower fetters connected to the lower realms of existence, are spontaneously reborn in the pure abodes, and there attain final nirvana without ever returning from that world. Who are we speaking about? We are talking about non-returners. Such is the nature of the monks in this community of monks. Monks, there are in this community of monks those who, with the destruction of the three fetters, and with the diminishing of lust, hate, and delusion, are once returners, returning only once to this world to make an end of suffering. Such is the nature of monks in this community of monks. Monks, there are in this community of monks those who, with the total destruction of the three fetters, are stream winners, not bound for the lower world, sure of liberation, destined for awakening. Such is the nature of the community of monks. Monks, there are in this community those who dwell devoted to the cultivation of the four stations of mindfulness, Satara Satipatthana. Monks, there are in this community of monks those who dwell with the cultivation of the four right exertions. Monks, there are in this community of monks those who dwell devoted to the cultivation of the four spiritual bases of power. What we see here is the devotion of the monks to the limbs of awakening, to the Satisha Bodhipashika Dhamma. And it elucidates that attainment was attained because of the commitment that the monks had towards the Satisha Bodhipashika Dhamma. Monks, there are in this community of monks those who dwell devoted to the cultivation of the four bases of spiritual power. Monks, there are in this community of monks those who dwell devoted to the cultivation of the five spiritual faculties. Monks, there are in this community of monks those who dwell devoted to the cultivation of the five spiritual powers. Monks, there are in this community of monks those who dwell devoted to the seven awakening factors. Monks, there are in this community of monks those who dwell devoted to the cultivation of the noble eightfold path. Such is the nature of monks in this community of monks. Monks, there are in this community of monks those who dwell devoted to the cultivation of loving kindness. Monks, there are in this community of monks those who dwell devoted to the cultivation of compassion, those who dwell devoted to the cultivation of altruistic joy, those who dwell devoted to the cultivation of equanimity, those who dwell devoted to the meditation on the impurities, Asubha Bhavana, those who dwell devoted to the cultivation of the perception of impermanence, Anicca Samya, those who are devoted to the cultivation of the mindfulness of in and out breathing, Anapana Sati Bhavana, right? Now, let us also note that in this assembly which was created on the foundations of the enlightenment of the Buddha does not in any way claim that the monks dwell devoted to the Buddha. What the Buddha claims is the devotion and praises the devotion of the monks to the practice, not the devotion to the Buddha, but to the practice, which is the ultimate devotion that can be in praise of the Buddha, right? Cultivation of mindfulness of the in and out breathing, Anapana Sati Bhavana. Monks, when the mindfulness of in and out breathing is developed and often cultivated, it is of great fruit and benefit. It is of great fruit and benefit. Anapana Sati Bhikkave Bhavita Bahuli Katha Mahapala Hoti Mahanimsa. Mahanisansa, right? Now here, often cultivated comes from the fact of Bhavita Bahuli Katha, right? Which is the fact of repetitive practice of the technique, right? Of the technique. It is a great fruit and great benefit. Hence, we would always say that one should not let go of that technique of practice just because one or two settings of the practice did not deem fruitful, right? One must reapply oneself to that practice, which is here Anapanasati Bhavana. Anapanasati Bhikkave Bhavita Bahuli Katha Chattaro Satipatthane Paripureti. When the mindfulness of in and out breathing is developed and often cultivated, it brings the 4 stations of mindfulness to perfection, right? Through Anapanasati, perfecting the Sattva Satipatthana. Chattaro Satipatthana Bhavita Bahuli Kata Satta Bojjhange Paripurenti. By fulfilling the 4 Satipatthanas again and often cultivated, one fulfills, they bring the 7 factors of enlightenment to perfection. 7 awakening factors to perfection. Satta Bojjhanga Bhavita Bahuli Kata Vijja Vimutting Paripurenti. When the 7 factors of enlightenment are developed and often cultivated, they bring true knowledge and liberation to perfection. Kathang Bhavitacha Bhikkave Anapanasati. And how monks is mindfulness of in and out breathing developed? Kathang Bahuli Kata Mahapala Hoti Mahanisansa. And how is it often cultivated so that it is of great fruit and great benefits? How do you do it? Here, monks, a monk who has gone to the forest or to the foot of a tree or to an empty house. Ida bhikkave bhikkhu aranyagato va rukkamulagato va sunyagaragato va Nisidati pallankang abujitva ujumkayang panidaya. Sits down, having crossed his legs and keeping his body upright. Right? Keeping his body upright. Remember, it is very important to understand that during this time, Brahmin practices would have already taught the importance of Ujjumkaya, right? With yoga practices, meditative practices were a part of the time, right? Sits down and having crossed his legs and keeping his body upright, establishes mindfulness before him. Mindfully, he breathes in. Mindfully, he breathes out. Now, parimukang sating upattapetva, which is before the start of Anapana practice, sating upattapetva, having stabilized awareness. Having stabilized awareness, how? Establishes mindfulness before him, sati, right? On what? Sits down, having crossed his legs and keeping his body upright, establishes sati. So in that motion establishes mindfulness over the body, sitting there in the posture that has been chosen. Right? All these points are important, yeah, as we go through the sutra. Yeah. So satova assa sati, so satova passa sati. Mindfully he breathes in, mindfully he breathes out. Here, mindfully. So satova assa sati, so satova passa sati. What is mindfully here? Mindfully here is that which has been established in the earlier verse, which is what? Establishes parimukhan sating pattapetva. Right? That is the mindfulness that he is speaking about, which has been established at the point of sitting down. It is not talking about a sense of mindfully committing to breathing in and out. The mindfulness is now upon the breath which breathes in and out, the breath which is present, right? The breath which is present. Solaskaruddesa, the 16 aspects. Kaya Anupassana, right? Kaya Anupassana. The first tetrad, contemplation of the body. Digangva assa santo digang assa samiti pajanati. Pajanati is he knows, right? Pajanati is he knows. Breathing in long, he knows. Breathing in, I breathe in long, right? Long in breath. Here, if we go down to 104, which is in the bottom of the page, I have rendered these important sentences, and those are the first two, noting tetrads to reflect a bare noting, right? That should occur in meditation, denoted by pajanati, that should occur in meditation, whose purpose is mental focus and not grammatically complete sentences, right? Only the steps 1 to 4 are noted by pajanati. The rest are sikkati. 5 to 16 are sikkati or training aspects. One has to put in more regulated effort, right? Now, when we talk about the word sikkati, sikkapada, that to be adhered, right? There's more effort in that word, right? Now, Digang va asasanto digang asasamiti pajanati knows the long, breathing in long, he knows, I breathe in long. Digang va pasasanto digam pasasamiti pajanati, or breathing out long, he knows, I breathe out long. Right? Now, what is a mistake that could probably be made here? Where we would start naming the different breaths that could potentially arise or potentially be. The naming, the labeling process, right? Noting and labeling is not the same thing, right? Remember, the noting comes about with the meditation, the mindfulness, the sati that has been established at the position of sitting, right? Now, rasangva asasanto rasang asasami iti pajanati. Or breathing in short, he knows, I breathe in short. Or breathe rasang va pasasanto rasang pasasami iti pajanati. Or breathing out short, he knows, I breathe out short. Right? Sabbakaya patisambedi asasissami iti sikkati. He trains himself thus, I will breathe in, experiencing the whole body. Whole body. Sabbakaya patasamvedi passasi samiti sikkati. He trains himself thus, I will breathe out, experiencing the whole body. He trains, now look at this word. Sabbakaya patisamvedi assa sissamiti sikkati. When the word sikkati is there, now there is effort to be made. When connoting an effort, this effort, it is regulated by a term of determination. Do you understand? By determination, right? Look at the Devika, look at the handout. Don't look at my face. Look at the handout. You can't see it. Shall I share the screen?
You know, I couldn't print it. Usually when I get it, I print it. Okay, it was too late for me. So that is why I'm looking at the phone. It's very low, the print.
Okay, hold on. Let me just share the screen if that helps.
Yes, that's why I'm just listening to you.
Okay. So when the word sikkati is present, sikkati, do you see the screen?
It's still coming.
Is it still coming?
Yeah. Has started screen sharing, but it didn't come up in my screen. That's why usually I print it and, you know, have the handout, but.
Wait, I can't share the screen. Watching the studio.
Never mind, I'll listen to you, Bhante, and I'm noting down.
Right.
Stuff.
Here, now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. Right. Maybe this is easier for everyone, maybe. Okay.
Okay.
Now, we had on breathing out short, he knows, breathing out short. The nose is noting, pajanati, right? Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to sikkati, sikkati is a term of determination, right? Is a term of determination. The determination is done as a way of arousing a sense of virya to the practice or what is to be practiced. So now what is to be practiced? What is to be practiced is sabbakaya patisamvedi asasissameti sikkati. He trains himself thus, I will breathe in experience in the whole body.
The whole body.
Right? The whole body. Sabbakaya patisamvedi pasasissameti sikkati. He trains himself thus, I will breathe out experience in the whole body. Now, how does this apply to our practice? How does this apply to our practice? Don't we, when we look at what do we refer to as the whole body? This is the beginning, middle, and the end of the breath. Right? The arising, the processing, and the passing away, the three timelines of the breath, the whole body. Right? He trains himself thus. Right? I will breathe out experience in the whole body. So now what should you be doing? Breathe out. Forget the I will. This is a part of this sentence here. Right? Breathe, I will. What is to be done? Breathe out experience in the whole body. Right? This is now what becomes a practice here. First, the Sati was established. The Sati was established. Right? Then we were aware of the long breath and the short breaths, noting the long breath and the short breath. Now we breathe in and out, experiencing the whole body of the breath. Right? Pasambayam kaya sankarang asasissamiti sikkati. Pasambayam kaya sankara asasissamiti sikkati. He trains himself thus, I will breathe in, calming the bodily formation. Right? Now, what does this mean? Function of breathing. Right? Now, this is an important part. Right? Now, let's just go and see what 107 is saying. Sankhara is the formation. Sankhara is the bodily formation. The bodily formation is the in and out breathing itself. This calming process may lead to the development of jhana, but this is not the primary object here, right? Now, here, passambayam kaya sankaram asasissamiti sikkati. The body, when we say passambayam, right, it refers to a mentality where with each breath that is taken, with more settling, when the mind settles upon this position of awareness, settles with every breath, bodily sankhara here referring to the breath itself, calms down with every breath that is taken in and out. This also denotes, now please, if you want to unmute yourself and say, Bhante, whatever, please, by all means, yeah? So here, pasambaya refers to a position of mind where, with the conviction that we have to this practice now, with awareness placed upon the breath, and now the word sikkati coming into motion as well. Here, with every breath that arises and passes away, a further settling of mind with the object. However, what it mentions in 107 is the fact that the bodily sankhara is not the object. But we use this term of calming, passambayam, in a way to further establish ourselves in the awareness of the breath. Do you understand, everyone? Is that clear?
Bhante, there's a slightly deviated explanation I have come across. Of course, what you say, sikkati is learning in actually in Pali, learning, and pajanati is realization or experiencing in Pali. Some of the Buddhist monks in Sri Lanka, they explain this sabbakaya patisangvedi, right? Sabbakaya patipanti, actually when you are still in the contemplating on breath, you actually experience your body as well, right? And it's not only the experiencing the body of the breath, it's experience your body as well. So that means you experience your in-breath, out-breath, and you expand. I think this is explained by some of the forest traditions, and including that Rerukavi Chandvimala. So here what we experience is expansion and contraction of your body as well.
Yes.
And that's another way of, so that means
no.
There are two things. Let me explain. There are two things here. Pasakaya. Oh, I lost the Sabbakaya Patisangvedi. Actually, it's in some Buddhist priests, they say here the Sabbakaya Patisangvedi, Sabbakaya Patisangvedi actually still you keep your in-breath and out-breath or the concentration, you actually experience your expansion and contraction of your body also. And then when you move to Pasambayang Kaya Sankarang, then you actually lose that bodily feeling and you actually completely come out of bodily feeling. And then you actually contemplating on the breath only. That's the opening or the door to your jhana. So that's actually beginning of jhana because you are purely on concentration of your in breath and out breath. How that explanation explain in this one? I know this there are two versions.
No, Dhamsari, this is like
Yeah,
this, right?
yeah.
That is also, it's not two explanations. It's one, right?
Yeah.
That is in the Kaya. Now we are going through the Kaya Nupassana, the Kaya Nupassana position.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So here, when we explain, right, there is a position that we can explain from the position of admitting ourselves without the Satipatthana and with the Satipatthana.
All right. Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah.
With the Satipatthana, when it comes to the practical application of it, right, sometimes going head on without the with the Satipatthana can at first be a bit strenuous.
Okay.
Because of the fact that within the sutra here, when we say Parimkan Sating Patta Petva, this is something that people with a lot of hindrances can't do.
Okay.
Right? So that is why then in the explanation, we would go into explaining it in those two approaches, which is in the way that we approach it with the Satipatthana and without the Satipatthana only at first.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But if the mindfulness is then established, right? If the mindfulness is then established, the mindfulness, the breath that we would see would spread, the awareness would be able to now spread to the observation of Kaya Anupassana itself.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
So it is the same explanation with and without Satipatthana.
Okay. Yeah.
Right?
Bhante, because the stage 4 is the end of Kayanupassana. That first tetrad is actually, you can consider as a Kayanupassana, as well as you can consider as actually it's a samatha.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, connection. It's a samatha. It's because if you further develop into number 4 into samatha side, right? Contemplating on purely on the objects, then you can achieve the levels of dhyanas, right?
Yeah.
Because as you see, this is the now number 19 is Vedananupassana, because we have finished the Kayanupassana. So that's actually part of the Kayanupassana also, yeah?
Yes, it can be cultivated in both those fashions.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And we will be going into both those areas separately as well.
Yeah, thank you, Bhante.
Right? Now, the word pajanati, paja is the root nya, right? The root nya, which is to know clearly, right? Which is to know clearly. how does one know clearly? Through, of course, simply, to put it in the most simple term, is to experience it as it happened. Now, I had Chamari gave me a call, and she, we were discussing what we discussed on Monday, and she said, Bante, what you mentioned made a lot of sense in terms of what is hearing as hearing, seeing as seeing, tasting as tasting, feeling as feeling, right? As it is, right? In the same way here too, right? Here it is, how does one know clearly? One knows clearly through seeing it as it is, which is the position of mindfulness, right? Which is the position of mindfulness. So mindfulness should not be taken as a separate entity. It should be taken as the essence. The mind should be present with, over that which is happening at that moment, right? Now, then, if we are to go into that extent and speak about Kaya Anupassana, the Kaya Anupassana can then be in the different methods that we will be learning and going through with the Kaya Anupassana. This can be even while walking, even while lying, even while sitting. This Kaya Anupassana over the breath can be observed and seen, right? But here, the discerning factor is this Parimukkhang Sati, which is where a person with the hindrances would be struggling with. It is because of this Parimukkhang Sati that we tend to have to bring in Anusati Bhavanas to further strengthen the resilience that we apply in terms of the strength of awareness, right? Mokada, two, because some people, just for the sake of meditation, is unable to practice or bring out this sati at this stage. You need a motivator, right? Without that motivator, it's difficult to sort of have that sense of presence over that whole body of breaths, right? That body of breath. So we are going to go into it separately, right? Any other questions, anyone? All right. Now, Passambayam kaya sankarang asasissamiti sikkati, Passambayam kaya sankarang passassamiti sikkati, right? Breathing in and breathing out, calming the bodily formation. The bodily formation, the function of breathing, right? This calming aspect comes through that Parimukkhang Sati, right? Imagine with every breath arising, going deeper and deeper into a state of presence and taken fully as the mindfulness is cultivating. What would be happening here? The mindfulness was established, and now we give it an object to focus on, and the mindfulness is growing through these stages, going deeper into it, calming the bodily formation. Calming the bodily formation. Is that clear? Right? Vedana Anupassana. The second tetrad. Contemplation of feelings. Right? Piti patisambedi asasissamiti sikkati. He trains himself thus. He trains himself, sikkati. He trains himself thus. I will breathe in, experiencing zest, right? Experiencing zest. Then, piti Piti Patisamvedi, Piti Patisamvedi, experiences. Pasasissamiti Sikkati, he trains himself, thus I will breathe out experiencing zest. Right? Breathe out experiencing zest. Now, in this flow, which starts from Kayanupasana and ends in Dhammanupasana, is founded on conviction. And that conviction is what was displayed at the beginning of the sutra, if you remember now. Right? The conviction of the disciples upon the practice. Right? The practice being those different aspects of the Satyesha Bodhispashika Dhamma. Right? Piti Patisamvedi Pasasissamiti Sikkati, then he trains himself, thus I will breathe out experiencing zest. Now, if you don't like something, if you're not bought into something, if you're not convinced of something, you can't experience a zest. It is only when one is bought into that practice, convicted, devoted to that practice, that a person experiences zest. Do you understand? Right? Zest. Sukhang patisamvedi asasissamiti sikkati. He trains himself, thus I will breathe in experience in joy. Sukha. Right? He trains himself, thus I will breathe out experiencing joy. Breathe out experiencing joy. Right? Here, please do not misunderstand, he trains himself. This is not a reminder to self. This is a determination. Right? So, for example, when you're breathing, right, don't attempt to remind yourself, let me be happy about this. It doesn't work like that. Right? It is truly a determination that you sit with in your meditation, right, for the duration of that practice. Chittasankara patisamvedi asasissamiti sikkati. He trains himself, thus I will breathe in experience in the mental formations, right? I will breathe in experiencing the mental formations. Now, what is Chittasankara? In the same method given in the previous note applies to the second and third clauses. According to Ajahn Brahm, when the blissful breath is established, it may appear that your breath has disappeared, that you have this beautiful, stable peace, but no breath. You are still breathing, but the breath is no longer experienced as a touch of a body. Instead, it is experienced as an object of mind, right? As an object of mind. You are switching from feeling to knowing. Feeling to knowing, right? Now try to understand this not theoretically, understand it, how it applies to your own practice, right? That is why the Buddha called this seventh stage, this seventh stage, knowing the breath as a mind object. Knowing the breath as a mind object. According to some teachers, in the second, the three lower jhana are present, and in the third, all four are present. Mental formations here refer to feeling, perceptions, and mental concomitants, which are calmed by the development of successive higher level of calm and insight, right? Calm and insight. Now, remember, when we go into the different aspects by which, or the different methods by which Vipassana can be practiced, although the verses are short, these verses encompass all of those methods that can be practiced under those headings of Kayanupasana, Vedananupasana, Chittanupasana, and Dhammanupasana, right? Now, what are goal is going to be is to clearly differentiate, define, and understand, right? Now, something, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you this before we start, but something that I want you to do as we go on is on a notebook or whatever it is that you have next to you, if any question arises as to, okay, what is zest, what is sukha, what is this, what is that, write it down, right? Write it down, and as we go on, those questions should be answered, right? Those questions that you write for yourself should be answered, right? And they will be as we go on with the sutras and the other resources that we are going to be using. Do you understand? Right? All right. So let's come back here. Chittasankara patisamvedi pasasissamiti sikkati. He trains himself, thus I will breathe out experience in the mental formations. Passambayam chittasankarang asasamiti sikkati. He trains himself, thus I will breathe in, calming the body, mental formations, right? Calming the mental formations. Here, now going into a deeper state, right? With the foundations laid in these verses here. Piti Sukha, right? Remember, from going from that sense of noting to now completely knowing, right? Experiencing. This is a position where the mind has now established a sense of presence with the object, which was first the breath, and now moves to the components that that breath has now brought out, which is defined by Sukha Priti. Is that understood, everyone? Is that clear? Yeah, I hope it is. Damsiri?
Bande. So that means what you say is you actually gradually you change to feeling, right? Because in the first tetrad, you don't have feeling. You actually contemplated on uh, flow of air, or whatever you call it.
Body of the breath.
Yeah, vayo dhatu.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, once you now switch over to the sukha and that you experience, now you actually move into feeling part of it. Yeah.
You don't move anything. It
No,
will.
no, no. I mean the mind gradually.
Yes.
The mind you don't do it. Yeah. The mind gradually switch over to feeling.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why it's called Vedananupassana, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Because at this position, also Damsiri, now
Yeah.
with the focus that the sutra brings, this also focuses, this also talks about jhana, right? And how
Yeah.
it sort of resemble those areas of jhana as well, right? So,
Okay.
so the mind, remember Damsiri, even in your own practice, as you have shared with us,
Yeah.
where the breath, and actually many other people here who experience the disappearance of the breaths,
Yeah.
right, who now note a different area, right? Now note or continue with a different area, because now the position has moved us to a different range, if I might put it in that way, a different range, a different scope, which has opened up to you, which was not present earlier, right? Yes, Samantha.
Thank you, Bante. I was just wondering, at the beginning, the first Kayanapassana, it said, we were saying that calming the bodily formations.
Yes.
And now in this one, we're saying calming the experience, calming the mental formations. So now in the bodily formations, we were focusing on the breath.
Yeah.
So when we say calming the bodily, it's not the body we're calming, it's calming the breath, I presume, is it? And then eventually letting go of the breath, and then we move on to the mind, the breath. Yeah, once you let go of the breath and you don't feel the breath and the body, then you go into the the mind, Chittanapasana, is it? Mental formations.
No.
Is it? No.
Don't confuse it. Don't confuse it. Now, we started off this pasambayam, right? This calming comes through that sense of conviction, right?
Mm-hmm.
The conviction comes now. For a person to now be convicted or have that sense of devotion to the practice, that comes from the subduing of the hindrances,
Mm-hmm.
right? With the subduing, with every breath, as we now have established mindfulness, I go into this breath, the subtle breath. The more that we go into it, we will now be practicing a change and shift in the devotion that we have to the state of mind, right?
Mm.
For example, as one man would derive happiness from owning beautiful material objects, now that same man derives happiness, a state of calm, through now going into the breath.
Mm.
That sense of going into the breath itself, here it says, he trains himself thus. This, nothing of this is brainwashing. This is with the maturation of mindfulness towards the breath. Do you understand, Samantha?
Mm. Yeah.
Arises with conviction to the breath. And also, this is not Chittanupassana as yet. We are still here. It's Kaya Anupassana.
Yeah.
And we will be breaking this down. Don't you worry. We will be breaking this down. So, Samantha, I want you to write on your notebook what is calming and Passambaya, right? And that question should be answered as we go through the sutta. Do you understand, Samantha?
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
I get it. Yeah.
So
Thank you, Bante.
this calming of the bodily formation, sankhara. Sankhara is that which arises with condition. හේතුවක් හින්දා හටගන්න යම් ධර්මයක් තිබේ නම් ඒ ධර්මයට අපි සංඛාරයක් කියලා නම් කරනවා. This sankhara that arises, calming the bodily, it calms with the experience of not being flustered by the hindrances. So it is talking about a position of mind where now the mind is devoted to the practice. And with that keen sense of devotion to the practice, the mind is subduing the hindrances. When the mind subdues the hindrances, the mind will be able to now derive this pasambayam through that object, which is in this position, the breath, the whole body of the breath.
So, yeah, I heard someone saying I think it's Ajahn Brahm, maybe the breath is the body.
Okay, that is that is that is the same thing that Dhamma said in a different way, right? What happens is when the mind now, okay, how can we say it? Now, if I am meditating, right? Let's say I am meditating in the sense of a yoga practice, like yoga, I don't know much about it. So I'm sitting here and I think I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to keep my back straight, I've got to do this, I've got to have silence around me, and now I am now observing the breath. Now you're observing the breath with a sense of self. Do you understand?
Yeah.
You're observing the breath with a sense of self. To such a person, the breath is not the body. When the person establishes sati over the present whole body of the breath, meaning the beginning, middle, and the end, right? And the presence is with the breath, now the body disappears. Now the breath is the whole body. Do you get it? The breath will never become the whole body as long as in your mind you know that you have shoulders, you have feet, you have legs. Why? That is self. Do you understand? Is that clear, Samantha?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So when a person now begins to experience the breath in terms of, first we will say the beginning, middle, and the end. And now the breath is the whole encompassing sankhara in that moment of presence. And now the breath is now connected to in terms of experience where the whole body itself disappears. Do you understand? Why? Because the mind is that present upon that breath. Why? Because you're not applying self again and again and again. What you are doing is you are present, sati, parimukham, and you are observing the whole body of the breath. So the deeper you allow it to flow, right, with that conviction, that is why the conviction comes before the practice, you see. Because if it comes in the middle of the practice or after the practice, by practice I mean what you should be doing at that moment, self is there. Do you get it, Samantha?
Yes, that makes sense now. Yeah. Thank you.
But Samantha, on your notebook, what is calming, Pasambaya? Write that down, right? Because there is more about calming that we have not gone into. Yes, Shriyani.
Yes.
Bhante, can you correct me here? Kayanupassana in Anapana Sati Bhavana is long breath is long, short breath is short, vibrating breath. That is, they are watching the breath is the Kayanupassana section. Is that right? And then when it's come to the Vedananupassana, you start experiencing the development of your focus of your breath into Priti Sukha Ekaggata, that stage.
Yes, we shift from the body of the breath
to
the Vedana, the sensation of that.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Because I was always wanted to break down and see which with the Anapana Sati Bhavana, where is these sections are. Now I understand. Yeah. Okay. So when it's come to the Priti Sukha Ekaggata stages, that is where you are experiencing this breath in experiencing in a sort of I understand. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll be going through it. Yes. All right. Now. All right. Where are we?
Right. So Kayanupassana, Vedananupassana, Chittanupassana. Right. Okay.
All right. Now. Chittasankara Patisamvedi Asasissamiti Sikati. He trains himself thus. I will breathe in experience in the mental formation, right? Mental formation. Chittasankara Patisamvedi Pasasissamiti Sikati. He trains himself thus. I will breathe out experience in the mental formation, right? The mental formation, which is the concomitants, the Vedana, and the perception, right? Now, Passambayam Chitta Sankarang Asasissamiti Sikkati. He trains himself, thus I will breathe in, calming the mental formations, right? Passambayam Chitta Sankarang Pasasissamiti Sikkati. He trains himself, thus I will breathe out, calming the mental formations. Now, going into a state where the zest and all that we sort of experience the Priti Patisamvedi, Sukha Patisamvedi, the Chittasankara Patisamvedi, right? Here in this position now what happens is Passambayan Chitta Sankara Asasissamiti Sikkati Passasissamiti Sikkati. He trains himself, I will breathe out, calming the mental formation. Now, in this position, the sense of non-self cultivates itself, grows even more. The mental formations, again, Sankhara, arises because of condition, and because it arises, it passes away. Clinging on to mental formations causes suffering. Anicca, dukkha, it is anicca, it is dukkha, and it is anatma. Practicing it in terms of the satipatthana would link it or bring those results out even deeper, meaning not in a way that you're instigating it in any way, but you are bringing it out through only one thing, insight. Now, the mind calming the mental formations, meaning a position of samadhi, a position of jhana arising where it would allow for that distancing from the Atma which clings on to those experiences of Priti, Sukha, and even Chitta. Do you understand? Yeah? Yes, Shriyani. Your hand is up, Shriyani. Is it from the last time? Okay. Now, Chittanupassana. Don't worry about it. We are going to go into what these verses are, right? And there's much more of the sutra left. So this is just the beginning. Okay. Now, Chittanupassana, this third tetrad, contemplation of mind, of the mind. Chitta patisamvedi asasissamiti sikkati. He trains himself thus. I will breathe in experience in the mind. I will breathe in experiencing the mind, right? He trains himself thus. I will breathe out experiencing the mind, right? Now remember, this is Satipatthana on the foundation of breathing, right? This is Satipatthana, this is, this is Anapanasati. This is Satipatthana on the foundation of Anapanasati, right? Hence, the breath is now elaborated in this approach. It is elaborated upon. Here, what is being is a question. Who am I in this position? Do you understand what I'm asking you? Who am I at this moment, where now we have crossed over from Kayanupassana to Vedananupassana, now in Chittanupassana? Who am I? I am the breath. I am the breath. How? Because of the present moment. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Right? Because remember, we have now in this position of coming from Kaya to Chitta, Chitta to Kaya to Vedana, Vedana to Chitta. Now the mind is in a position of Samadhi. Right? Now I will breathe experiencing the mind. Chitta patisamvedi passasissamiti sikkati. Chitta patisamvedi passasissamiti sikkati. You breathe, and whilst that process, whilst in that moment of presence, experiencing the mind, right? Experiencing the mind. Here. Experience in the mind, according to Ajahn Brahm, it's only at this stage that you can know the mind. The only place where you can know, actually, where you can know actually experience the mind. But what we call a nimitta, a reflection of the mind. Remember, the mind is that which is knowing. The mind is that which is knowing. According to Bhikkhu Bodhi, experience in the mind is to be understood by way of the fourth jhana, right? By way of the fourth jhana. Chitta, mind, is synonymous with mano and vijnana. Mano and vijnana. So too, in most traditions following the Abhidharma period, but they were... right. The fourth jhana. Here, remember what we sort of spoke about when we sort of discussed the Chittanupassana, which is a position of awareness when knowing the mind, right? Here, the knowing of the breath, what it is saying here is by what we call a nimitta, reflection of the mind. Remember, this is the most important point here. Remember, the mind is that which is knowing. Do you understand what Ajahn Brahm is saying here then? You, at this position, experience the breath. How do you experience the breath? Through the mind. Now, what do you then observe? The mind which observes the breath. Do you understand? The mind which observes the breath. Here, the mind which observes the breath. Abhippamodayang chittang asasissamiti sikkati. Gladdening. He trains himself thus. I will breathe in, gladdening the mind. Right? Gladdening the mind. Here, going into a deeper sense of devotion to this object being the mental object taken as a point of awareness. The mental object which knows and observes and is present at the moment of knowing the breath. Right? Here, now the gladdening part is that which comes about in now going into a state where the mind knows exactly or is calmly present with the breath at that very moment. This gladdening would be experienced in many ways, which we will go into, right? Which we will go into. Abhippamodayang chittam passasamiti sikkati, right? Gladdening the mind. According to Ajahn Brahm, the mental reflux, nimitta, may appear to some as being too dull, right? May appear to some as being too dull or unstable, which are addressed by the 10th and 11th steps respectively. Shining the nimitta and sustaining the nimitta. The more joy there is in the mind, the more brilliantly shines the nimitta. To enter jhana, the nimitta has to be the most brilliant thing that you have seen and on unearthly beauty. The reflux may be dull due to poor moral conduct or to low mental effort. Right? In the latter case, one should remedy it by switching to an to the inspirational meditations like a reflection anusati of any of the three jewels on giving chaga anusati or metta bhavana, on giving chaga anusati or metta bhavana. According to Bhikkhu Bodhi, gladdening the mind is either the attainment of the first two jhana containing zest, or as the penetration of those jhanas by regarding them with insight as subject to destruction. Now, what is mentioned here is, okay, what is mentioned here is this. As we go into Anapana Sati, and having developed a sense of samadhi over the breath in its different variations of Kayanupasana and Vedananupasana, here, as a result of the awareness over the breath, you will experience a mental reflux here, which is yours as a reflux, or as a result experience a nimitta. A nimitta would often be experienced by many in dull colors at first, right? In dull colors at first. Now, we have discussed the position by which one would experience nimittas earlier, but we will go through them again. The nimittas could appear as subtle, disformed, deformed formations, which can be smoke-like, which can be cloud-like, which can be swirls of water-like in dull colors. Now, when the nimitta would appear, this is a sign. It is a nimitta. It is a sign. When the sign appears, with the sign, the meditator goes deeper into the awareness of the object, which is now, in this case, the mind that knows. Knows what? Knows the breath at the moment of presence. At the moment of presence. When this happens, the nimitta will now start changing. That changing will connect to the gladdening of mind. Here, gladdening is with 100% literally taking the meaning of the word. The mind becomes glad over the position that it is in. But remember, this is the gladness isn't the object. By what we mean by gladness isn't the object, what it also means is refrain from focusing on the gladdening or the nimitta. Do you understand? The nimitta should basically be, it is like chanting, right? And then you have a pirit water, a glass of water or a bowl of water in front of you. Now, you don't chant to make the water holy. You chant knowing the meaning of what you're chanting and with a sense of purity in the mind. As a result, the water becomes holy water. Do you understand? In the same manner, we do not meditate to perfect the nimitta. The nimitta will become perfect with the meditation, which is done. Right? So the gladdening does not become the object. However, the meditation over awareness of the breath through the knowing of the mind gladdens. Now gladdens, the nimitta rises. Right? During this time, one might experience the hina bhaga samadhi or hana bhagi nimitta of a jhana. Right? Hana Bhagiya Samadhi, which is a samadhi that is weak and prone to destruction. Why? Because it is still weak. It is the first level of it. During this time, a person might hear sounds, right? However, or hear no movements around the person. However, when the gladdening increases, the sounds reduce, and all of those disturbances that could arise would reduce, with the mind going deeper into the object, which is what? Knowing the mind which knows the object. Rather, let me rephrase it, experience in the mind that knows the object. Do you understand? Any questions, anyone? Yes, Damsiri.
Bhante, the gladdening, what is singular word for that? Is it Pramod?
Pramoda.
Pramod.
Yeah, here,
So,
Abhi,
yeah,
Abhi, Pamoda.
Pramod. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Right. All right. Now, how would we kind of define this, right? This feeling from a practitioner's point of view, it's almost as if, it is almost as if you work for something. An example which is there is, one who is in a desert, craving water, finally drinks water, right? It is an overwhelming feeling. It is truly an overwhelming feeling, but not a feeling, but it is very much connected to the presence. It's an overwhelming feeling, right? Where it just seems like you've wanted something for so long and you finally got it, right? But this feeling is connected to that moment of presence, not to anything else, right? Not to anything, but the moment of presence. Now you want to be in that moment. You finally got it. You want to be in that moment. That also brings way to the weaknesses that could come about, the attraction to the nimitta, right? Let's move on. We'll cover these grounds, right? Samadhamana chittang asasamiti sikkati. Oh, it's 8:30. 8:30. All right, let's finish this verse, yeah? Samadhamana chittang asasamiti sikkati. He trains himself, I will breathe in, concentrate in the mind. Samadhamanang chittang pasasi samiti sikkati. He trains himself, thus I will breathe out, concentrate in the mind. Right? Going deeper into that sense of the nimitta now becoming clearer as one progresses. Right? Concentrating the mind, sometimes even the brilliant nimitta can appear unstable, right? Now that is where I said the smoke, cloud-like, those are all unstable, remember, right? It is just a reflection of the knower. If the knower moved, so did his reflection, the nimitta. The solution, according to Ajahn Brahm, is to focus on the knower. There you go. The object is not the gladdening, it's not the nimitta. Focus on the knower, which is the mind, that which is experiencing this, and calm that into stillness. Do you understand? Right? Now, when the nimitta appears, and you noting the nimitta, which is right in front of you, it's right in front of you, right here, right? And now it might be deformed and just all over the place almost. But now you're also a little bit happy because you have even something which is, all over the place. You have something, right? Even if it is dull, you have something. So you feel quite happy about it. But now what you observe is the mind that observes. When that happens, almost as if a shaggy dough is kneaded and then becomes formed, so too the mind becomes more formed and clear with clarity. And with it, the nimitta comes to be formed and into a formed, stable position. Do you understand? But the position here is, or the difficulty here is, not being overtaken by the position of the nimitta, but keeping the mind on the knower whilst also being visually the nimitta being present. Do you understand? Do you understand?
Bhante, another question. When you get a nimitta, it starts with a small and gradually it increases, right? Then I'm not seeing nimitta. If it is not, what I see is it starts with a single point and gradually, well, say if it is like a piece of wool, and it's a very different. There's no different shapes, and it increases and increases, and then disappears. Then I get another nimitta starting from one point and gradually increases and increases.
What is the color?
White.
White. It's probably an upaklesha.
Okay.
Right.
So if you have a real nimitta, it should be permanent.
No. Nimittas will arise and pass away. Right.
Okay. Okay.
That is why here it's mentioned, if the knower moved, so did his reflection. Right. So it is really Dhamsiri. It is connected to the position of the mind.
Yeah.
Right. Then the other thing to be concerned about here, or to know here, is that when the nimitta arises, right, and this gladdening of mind, as long as the gladdening of mind is present, the mekale tula panchasile kadunot nimitta.
All right. Okay.
Right. During this time, if you break, because why? You break the panchasila because of devotion to kama tanha, bhava tanha, vibhava tanha, whatever it is. Or to the sensual pleasures, whatever you would, or vyapada, theenamitta, uddacha, kukucha, to the devotion to the hindrances, not kama tanha, bhava tanha, devotion to the hindrances. Here, that is why the sutra starts from the position of devotion. Devotion to what? Devotion to the practice. That devotion shifts. That is why when you have a nimitta, you have to be a bit extra careful. Right? Extra careful to keep the gladdening. Keep the gladdening. Right? Keep the gladdening. Bhavanamaya sukha yen manasa founding the happiness of the mind through meditative gratification. Do you understand? The moment panchasile kadune gamamba gratification එක වෙනස් වෙනවා. Then you lose the nimitta. Right? And often when it happens very often where nimittas or different visuals would appear in different ways, but it is very important to note, right? Very important to note whether this is a nimitta or whether it is a upaklesha. As a result, as a manifestation of a mind fighting with the hindrances, right? Fighting with the hindrances. And with time, it does become clearer, right? With time, it does become clearer. But up until it does, do not make solid decisions over what it is. Have an open mind. Because why? In the first place, that's not your object.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It's not your object. You should be focusing on it in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So with time, if it is arising and passing away, different colors coming up, tsunamis, whirlwinds, whirlpools, these sorts of things are all upakleshas.
Okay.
Right? Traffic lights, siren lights, different sort of beams of laser lights, beams of light, all of these things are upakleshas. But this shouldn't be worrying you in any way, because in the first place, you are not to focus on it. Because the object of the mind is not that nimitta, it is the mind.
Yeah.
The knower.
Yeah.
You understand? Okay. Mala?
You have?
Okay.
You raise the hand. No, somebody else.
That's fine. Devika?
Okay, quick question. I think you clarified much with the answer that you gave to Damsiri. Can you hear me, Bante?
Yes.
Okay, Bante. So when I start meditating, like the Vipassana, when we start concentrating on breathing, I think in my mind, it's Upada, Titi, Banga, like that. Breathing in, it stays and passes away. So like that, when I go into deep concentration, I see this pale lights, like yellow color. But I always say, no, I don't want to get attached to it. And then I go into, bring my mind back into the Upada process and, continue to focus like that. Tell me, is it the right way or?
All right. So,
sorry to take your time, Bante. You can explain to me on meditation.
No. Well, Upadhatiti Banga, as we have gone through what we have gone through today, Upadhatiti Banga, that is the body of the breath.
Yes.
And it should not be instigated. It should be determined, but not instigated.
Oh, I see.
Just as a person would know the long breath and the short breath without instigation, but through determination and knowing, and in that position. Right? Okay. So, Upadhatiti Banga, because as we mentioned, this is not a position of labeling. It is a position of knowing and experiencing. Do you understand, Devika?
Yes.
Okay. Shriyani?
Bante, you mentioned about the Hanabhagi Samadhi and another one? Weak Samadhi?
Hanabhagi Samadhi.
And another one you mentioned.
Did I?
Yeah, two. You mentioned two. And can you explain the two, please?
Hanabhagi Samadhi, Madhyama Samadhi, and Panicha Samadhi. Right? Which
Madhya?
Madhyama Samadhi and Pranita Samadhi. Right?
Yeah. Pranita. Okay.
Which is referring to the jhanas. Right? Which is referring to the jhanas which are stage 1 Hanabhagi, which is the jhana which is prone to destruction. Then Madhyama Dhyana, which is the dhyana which has progressed from Hanabhagya to a stage of to a sense of a middle stage where it is beyond the Hana Bhagya, yet not too strong as well. You will still be hearing sounds and noises, but at a low frequency. Then, Pranita, you will not be hearing anything. You'll be 100% focused
Okay.
upon
Okay.
the object, right?
Okay. Yeah.
All
Okay.
right.
Okay. Thank you, Bhante. No, yeah. Thank you very much.
Right. We'll be going through all of that, right? We'll be going through all of that. And what I hope to do is to really sort of really know the subject. And that is why after finishing this part, we are not going to stop there, but we are now then going to apply it. We are going into the commentaries, which is in the beginning of this sutra, which also has a lot of information, which is really good, right? And then we are going to discuss the practical approach to the meditation, through the main techniques that the Theravada world knows, which is the Mahasi technique and the PAOK technique, right? The two most eminent and the most respected techniques that the Theravada world knows today, right? Which have been taught by the most eminent of monks who know their stuff. So what we then hope to do is to really go into it and apply it to our daily practice where we properly know what we are doing, right? So so I hope that you like the approach that I'm taking. Regardless, you have no choice. You have to follow. But I think, I took a look at the different resources, and I think, this is going to really give us a very robust and clear understanding of the subject, which is really good and very, really nice. All right. So Lakshman, you've unmuted yourself. Do you want to say something?
No, Bhante, I want to just say sadhu, sadhu, thank you very much, Bhante.
All right, Lakshman.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
And I will
Bhante.
see you. I will see you next, on meditation day. All right. Take care and goodbye for now.
Teruvan Saranai,
Teruvan
sir.
Saranai.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you.